this is Chris with the Ancient Scholar. Well, we're in the middle of another weekend, and it's another weekend that I'm spinning up in the mountains, getting my mountain biking on. So I am currently relocating myself to another mountain range. So typically, when I mountain bike, at least in the Silver City, New Mexico area, I spend most of my time in the PA or the Pinos Altos range. But there's really good riding, mainly along the Continental Divide Trail, kind of southwest of Silver City, in a smaller mountain range known as the Burro Mountains. And so I'm going to be doing a group ride this morning in the Burro Mountains, and so I'm relocating, so to speak. And then after that, I'll head out, and I might actually be able to pick up my new bike today. The bike had been built up, and the shop was putting on a ride wrap. I actually ordered a custom built ride wrap kit. It's a frame guard, frame protection that you install, similar to, it's essentially a very high speed kind of helicopter frame tape, but it's all custom. I think it was 25 individual pieces, custom built to cover 95% of the frame of the bike. It's my first full carbon bike, so I want it really well protected. I just want to start things off right and have something that lasts a long time and something that looks good as well. So that's the plan for today, and then this afternoon, hopefully I can get another ride on the new bike, and then tomorrow I'm thinking about doing an all-day adventure ride, but we'll see what happens. So that's kind of why I'm looking a little rough, or maybe a little rougher than I normally look. So going into Halloween, I wanted to do a video that's at least pseudo-Halloween inspired and doesn't have any traditional educational value whatsoever, and we'll see how it goes. And I want to do it somewhat in the vein of entertainment. You all have been absolutely wonderful, honestly, in regards to some of the videos I've done that are not directly educationally relevant, shall we say, such as my reaction videos, and I've just absolutely enjoyed your comments, and it's been interesting to kind of share my journey into something entirely new, which is Aesop Rock, which has become one of my favorite artists, if I'm being honest, and I'm just digesting his entire catalog. I've gone through the Spirit World Field Guide, The Impossible Kid, Daylight, and Skeleton as well, and so I'm kind of working my way back. I mean, this is a guy who's been around for over 2 decades, so he's got a lot of work, and none shall pass, of course. And so I've really enjoyed all your comments, those of you that really have enjoyed those videos, and so it's been wonderful to do something new, and I'm really happy that you all have the grace to allow me to do something a little different, because frankly I'm so over all the COVID stuff right now. I just can't bring it in me to do another COVID video about emergency use authorization for pediatric vaccines. It's just, I'm so over COVID right now. It's been a breath of fresh air, frankly, to do something different. So to get to the crux of this particular video, I thought I'd talk about an animated series, and this is going to be something I don't think was developed with people like me in mind, and that is to say, how should I put this? Rather vanilla or parochial middle-aged dudes who have been married most of their adult life. So in other words, just kind of a rather average, boring guy. So I don't think the creators of these shows, we'll say, certainly had me in mind when they made that, when these were developed. But be that as it may, I've actually really developed a great fondness for one show in particular, because it's the one that has the most content. And these are two shows that really take place in the same universe, that were largely, at least initially, inspired and developed by a creator, fairly young creator, as I understand, the name of Vivienne Medrano. I believe she goes by the on-screen moniker of Vivzy Pop, and I believe she's fairly young. I don't even think she's in her 30s, maybe in her mid to late 20s. So pretty young creator, and she's developed a series of shows primarily on YouTube, which that's remarkable on its own, that someone has been able to do that breakthrough on YouTube, and without substantial support beyond Patreon and things like that, and really independently develop a kind of media empire, if you will. So that on its own is commendable, but I want to talk about the shows. So the first one that I saw, and this is a couple of years ago now, is actually a pilot for a show called Hazbin Hotel. I think maybe it was originally Happy Hotel, and there's a name change, Hazbin. But I believe Hazbin Hotel is the official name. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't. It seemed, it was kind of a lot of talk, a lot of stuff was revolving around this, and so I did watch it, and I wasn't really originally impressed by the pilot. It seemed very chaotic and frenetic. It kind of reminded me of a vulgar form of Looney Tunes or Animaniacs, or it's just something like that, where it just wasn't really my style when it comes to storytelling. The animation was incredible, really, and that's going to be a theme throughout. Very busy animation, so much going on in the background. When you think a lot of animation, you kind of have the background, which is fairly static, and then you have the object, typically a character or something going on, and you have this action set piece. But in the animation, at least in the Vivzy Pop's universe, the SpindleHorse universe, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, which is interesting from a visual standpoint, but it does make it very busy and frenetic. But it just didn't really, the whole plot, the whole story, while compelling, just how it was presented in the pilot wasn't as compelling to me, and it really didn't become compelling until sometime after, this is months after that pilot. It was actually a music video of sorts that focused on one of the characters in this series. His name is Angel Dust. So the universe takes place in a pseudo Judeo-Christian type hell, where there are different rings, as they call it, in hell. So it kind of has almost a Dante-like configuration, Dante cross circus sideshow. So it's kind of this part of the, I suppose, part of the punishment, quote unquote, in this hell universe isn't the classic fire and brimstone kind of stuff that you know comes out of Revelations, but more the chaos that is created by a very low state of conscientiousness. That's the kind of the suffering part of it, if you will. And anyway, and so one of these characters, his name's Angel Dust, who belonged to so he was originally human, belonged to a mob family in and he died in the mid to late 1930s, if I remember, of a drug overdose. Phencyclidine, actually. He was a PCP addict, which I thought was rather interesting because not a whole lot of people die of phencyclidine overdoses. Typically, and it's not something I run into a whole lot, just speaking from a medical standpoint, but I do run into its cousin maybe a little more frequently, ketamine. And even then, most people aren't dying of the drug so much as some of the problems associated with the drug, hurting themselves, or being victims of violence, because these drugs dissociate you, and you're not really able to, at least at higher doses, you're not really able to interact appropriately with the environment. So you could get hit by a car, or fall, or be the victim of violence, and that really seems to be where most of the problems. There are some number of people can hallucinate and become a little agitated and violent as the effects of those drugs are wearing off. Although it's a bit overplayed. But anyway, I know I'm focusing on this overdose thing, but just like from a pure phencyclidine overdose, I'd be curious to see how it actually killed him. I would assume, you could. You might have some idiosyncratic reaction. Maybe he went into a hyperthermic state. His body temperature got too high due to some idiosyncratic reaction, or maybe he literally took so much that it impacted his cardiorespiratory centers, his brain, and stuff. That'd be a bit unusual, but anyway, that's just not a rather atypical kind of overdose to see people die. I would tend to see more like opioid overdoses, where that classic dying happens. But anyway, I'm just rambling on at this point. But anyway, I didn't find the pilot compelling until several months later, where there was a music video that came out that focused on this particular character. And I thought the music video was incredibly compelling. It kind of delved into the backstory of this character a little bit, and it provided some additional context of where he's coming from, and it made me realize, oh wow, there really is a story that could be told here, and if done right, it could be a lot of dignity, and the overall feel of this show is kind of of redemption. Like, what is redemption, and can it occur? How does it occur? And what might that arc look like, even in the setting of a hell-like environment, if you will. So I actually found that a lot more compelling. Now, in addition to that, there is another show that has been going on, and the pilot for that aired fairly shortly after the Hazbin Hotel pilot. And I should say, just to give a basic breakdown of the Hazbin Hotel plot, as I understand, is there is a young demon lady by the name of Charlotte, who is the daughter of Lucifer and his wife Lilith. And Charlotte is developed a rehabilitation hotel of sorts in an attempt to rehabilitate people in hell so they can transcend their situations and circumstances and perhaps get into heaven. And that seems to be the overall theme. So there's this overall redemptive arc, and this Angel Dust character is the first patient for this avant-garde clinic of sorts. And there are a variety of other characters that come into play as well. But I won't get into that. That's kind of the overall plot. There is also another plot involving these specialized paramilitary angels that come to hell every year in December. So for a 24-hour period, they come down to hell, and I believe they're referred to as exorcists, and they kill as many demons as they can presumably in order to correct overpopulation in hell. So that's kind of another major part of the plot, as I understand it. Now, kind of going on parallel to that, in the same universe as far as I can tell, is another show that doesn't focus on the humans that become demons, these damn souls, but focuses on more the naturally born creatures and demons of hell, specifically imps, hellhounds, and succubi are the three major, and then some of the other higher up demons, if you will. This particular show pulls from the Ars Goetia, which is a book about the Goetic demons. That plays a big part of this, but it's a show called Helluva Boss, and essentially the synopsis of this Helluva Boss is an imp by the name of Blitzo. He calls himself Blitz in contemporary times. The O is silent, as he says. And in this world, imps and hellhounds are considered the lowest of the low. So there's a very hierarchical structure to hell in both shows. It's very clear there's a very solidly established hierarchy, and something akin to the caste, like a caste-like system in say in Hinduism. People that take Hinduism incredibly seriously, there's a caste-like structure. So that is a part of Helluva Boss, and it's actually an interesting meditation upon the haves and the have-nots, and I would even say thinking about racism. It may be an interesting meditation upon that. But anyway, this lowly little guy and his struggles to start up his own company, which is something incredibly unusual for these lowly creatures. They tend to be underlings for the higher up demons that are called overlords and princes of the various rings of hell. And so he starts his own company, and he has some employees, and this show kind of follows the exploits and the trials and tribulations of this fledgling company, and all of the interpersonal dynamics that come with it. But it more or less, the heart of the show focuses on this character Blitz, this imp, and a big part of it is his relationship with a demon of a much higher social class, a Goetic demon by the name of Stolas, which is actually a Goetic prince. If you read the book, an owl-like demon or a demon that does have an owl-like form, one of his forms, who is plants, apothecary, astronomy is kind of a part of this demon's shtick, if you will, and that's also represented in the show. And the show, of course, is named Helluva Boss. And just like Hazbin Hotel, upon initial viewing, when I watched the pilot, it was just too frenetic, too much going on, and really didn't seem to have a whole lot of dignity to it. It was just kind of this crazy Looney Tunes stuff, and this demon's business, their whole business model involves essentially people that have died and gone to hell and are reincarnated in hell as demons hire this company to extract revenge on people that have slighted these human demons, right? So if I died and I feel someone in the living world, the human world, has slighted me, I can pay these imps. These imps have the ability to actually go to the living world, and they can extract revenge. Generally involves killing people. And I was kind of like, okay. Anyway, it just wasn't incredibly compelling to me until... so there's a pilot episode, and then there's a first episode, and then the second episode. So the second episode of the first season was an episode, I believe, called Lululand, which takes place in a theme park of sorts. And it revolves around the relationship between the Blitzo and this other demon, Stolas. And essentially what happens at the beginning of the show is, in order to access the living world, Blitzo seduces this goetic demon, Stolas, and sleeps with him, and then is able to steal a book, a grimoire that Stolas has that allows him to access the living world. And so that's how Blitzo is able to do that. Now, in the process of doing that, Stolas, who is actually married to another presumably royal demon, I think her name is Stella, actually has a child as well, finds out about it, this affair of sorts, and there are, of course, repercussions to that have reverberated throughout the entire first season. But this Lululand is more from and this is where the show really won me over, because of the amount of the dignity and the respect that it had for this situation, because initially it was just kind of playing it off as the Stolas is just this horny guy, and there's these really substantial power imbalances, and I was kind of like, this is just not really compelling to me. I don't see anybody in this situation as being particularly redeemable, and it just wasn't really compelling to me until the second show, where it more or less comes from the standpoint of Stolas' daughter. The show starts off with her as a very young child, and she's having nightmares, and Stolas is trying to help her out, sings a song to her. The songs, of course, are a very important part of this show. It's very musically oriented. As I understand, Vivzie Pop really enjoys more classic theater, so that makes sense. And and then it kind of transitions to her as a juvenile, I suppose, or an older juvenile. I think she's a 16, 17-year-old, so kind of a teenager, if you will, and how she is dealing with the repercussions of this affair that has caused an incredible amount of tension, to say the least, between Stolas and his wife, and just the amount of dignity that this particular episode displayed in the amount of respect it had for what these characters was going through, and frankly the writing was incredible. Toward the end, Stolas is talking to his daughter, and she's incredibly upset. She's worried that he's going to leave her, and they're having this incredibly real conversation. And I really enjoyed, at one point, Stolas was attempting to communicate what he was feeling to her, and he couldn't articulate it, and he just told her, I don't have the words to say what I'm feeling. And I just thought, wow, that's really compelling and a very real way of presenting that situation. And so after that, I found the show much more compelling, and in more recent episodes, it's actually focused on the relationship between Stolas and Blitzo a little more. It's fleshed it out a lot more, and I do find it really compelling, and I hope going forward, and I believe that the new, so episode 8, the newest episode, should be coming out in the next day or so. There's a lot of speculation that it may come out on tomorrow, on Halloween. But going forward, there are a few things I hope the show does. First of all, I hope it continues to focus on the repercussions of this affair. There's this whole side story of Stella, Stolas' wife, hiring a hitman to try to kill him, and there's a whole backstory about the kinds of weapons demons, at least higher level demons as I understand, are fairly invulnerable to death, but there are special angelic blessed weapons that can be used to properly kill a demon, at least a higher level demon. And she hires a hitman. Actually, this is another demon, an imp-like demon that is voiced by none other than Norman Reedus. But she hires a hitman to try to kill Stolas. And so certainly there's that going on. And my big fear moving forward is perhaps they will kind of make Stella out to be an irredeemable villain of the story. And I hope they don't do that. I hope that they do something similar to, Stolas, where, first of all, the situation is pretty terrible for all parties involved, and it's not like he's blameless or anyone's blameless. It's just it's a really complicated, terrible situation all around. And my hope is that they approach Stella with the same kind of dignity and conscientiousness that hopefully they delve into her a little bit more, and it's just not a simple she's an evil, irredeemable villain, because I think that'd be a really bad way to go. If they could really maintain the complexity and nuance and show that this whole situation is just kind of a mess. Now, the online community surrounding this is interesting, because people are really into this. They call it shipping, I guess. Shipping is where you fantasize, I suppose, about certain characters having relationships. And so people are really excited about the Stolas-Blitzo relationship, and certainly I think it is moving in an interesting direction. It's becoming a lot better fleshed out. But I just hope that the show focuses on the nuance and complexity of the interpersonal dynamics of this, because this is not an uncommon thing in real life, where there is infidelity, perhaps there are relationships that maybe have not worked well, or have not been working well for years, and that's an incredibly relevant situation. That something like half of all marriages don't last, at least here in the United States, right? So this is a very common thing, and it's very complex and very nuanced, and there are multiple sides to it, and so hopefully they can maintain that complexity and nuance and just not make any single demon or person the ultimate villain, if you will. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, I've found the show incredibly about animation is you can approach topics in a different way using animation than you could using live action. You have a little more flexibility, and certainly the parallels between the show and what's going on in quote unquote real life. There are some very solid parallels, and there are some really good metaphors, I think, probably resonate with a lot of people who, have experienced these situations, been in these situations, or I suspect younger people, because I think these shows really are aimed at a younger audience. Maybe not, but really kind of validates their perspective as well. Like, as a younger person, I went through this situation. Say I went through this situation as a younger person, or I'm going through this situation as a younger person, where my family unit is falling apart, and what fears and concerns and what kind of suffering am I enduring as a part of that. And so I think that really does resonate with a lot of people for that reason. And the relationships, the complex relationships that seem to be forming here, in particular, relationships that maybe are not always presented in more standard media, although it has gotten a lot better. I'm thinking homosexual, bisexual relationships. There's even a transgender demon in one of the episodes, and the way that those situations are all approached, I think, is done extraordinarily well in this series. One of the things that really puts me off more and more traditional media is that sometimes these other kinds of relationships or these other kinds of characters are kind of tokenized. At least that's how I feel. It's like, okay, here we are. Here's the token gay person, and this is what they're all about. And it's just kind of like, in this world, well, everybody seems to be gay in this world, or queer to some extent, and so it's just kind of a non-issue. It just kind of is what it is, right? People are just allowed to be whatever they are, and it's not like okay, well, here's the token gay person, here's a token transgender person, right? It's just it's a very organic. It seems like there's a very organic integration of different kinds of relationships, and it's not like, here I am, right, here it is, point at it, wink wink kind of thing. It's just like, oh, here it is, and it just, these relationships and these individuals are presented very organically, and I think that the kind of dignity that is displayed is quite refreshing, if I'm being quite honest. Okay, so I've gone over half an hour, and I don't want to keep you guys any longer. So anyway, that's kind of my overview of these two shows. I'll be curious to see what happens with Hazbin Hotel. As I understand, it's been picked up by A24, and they've been working on it for a while, so perhaps we'll see that progress in the upcoming months. But I'm really excited to see what happens. I think there are 2 more episodes of the first season of Helluva Boss, and I'm really, really curious to see how the first season gets wrapped up. And I really has won me over. The show has really won me over. I think it's really worth your time. If anything that I've said it sounds at all interesting to you, certainly if you may be much more prudish, or you have an aversion to like a violent take on things, or you're perhaps more conventionally religious, you might be off-put. by some of the themes that are presented in this show, but otherwise, if you're reasonable and kind of see it for what it is, I think you might get something out of it. And so that's kind of my overview of this universe and the 2 shows that have come from it. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and hopefully have a great day, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.